representing members from national sections, but also direct industry organizations. Unique on the AVERE side is that we have industry members indirectly and directly, but also EV users as member organizations. And this gives us an interesting perspective on views from both parties. And this brings me automatically to our webinar today, where there's a key of play on as well the industry side, as well the EV user that is also aiming for more regulation. I'm happy to introduce you to Thomas Neumann, Policy Officer with AVERE, and he will guide us through today's webinar. Thomas, welcome.
Thanks, Philippe. So yes, welcome to everyone. Before we start, maybe a few small administrative remarks. The webinar will be recorded, and you will receive a link after the webinar to access the recording. So if you want to go back, rewatch any of the presentations of our speakers, you can definitely do that. And also speaker slides will be made available to you if the speakers agree to do so. So we will have 5 presentations today by 5 very interesting speakers for approximately 15 minutes each, and then we'll have a Q&A. For the Q&A, we'll aim to keep it short, 25 minutes maximum. Short disclaimer as well, the views expressed during this webinar do not necessarily represent the views or policies of AVERE or its individual members. We try to keep a plurality of opinions here. So not everything that is said is necessarily an AVERE position. For a brief introduction, why today's topic matters so much. So as you all know, there have been aims under the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy of the Commission to have nearly exclusively zero-emission vehicles on European roads by 2050. By 2030, already having 30 million zero-emission vehicles on the street, and the Commission estimates that there will be a need for 3 million public recharging points by 2030 for this aim. This is quite realistic, might even be overachieved looking at the increasing momentum of electric vehicles. So on the right side, you see current numbers of the EAFO, European Alternative Fuels Observatory. Last year, there have been over 500,000 battery electric vehicles sold, and that does not include hybrids, which were another 500,000 on top. Electric vehicles are getting ever cheaper, have already lower life cycle costs, and will soon be as cheap to purchase as internal combustion engines. And there is increasing support for the phase out of internal combustion around 2035, even among the established industry. And our recent vision, we've called for 100% of new vehicles sold to be electric from 2030 onwards. So there's quite a bit of momentum. There are ambitious aims, but this uptake must be supported by charging infrastructure and sufficient charging infrastructure. And this is where AFID comes into play and is really crucial. Philippe? Yes. Numbers alone, though, are not sufficient. At least they don't reflect everything that we need from the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive. And here on the left, you'll see a number of quality indicators for charging infrastructure, possible quality indicators. So beyond pure numbers, charging infrastructure could, for example, be accessible, affordable, comfortable, customer-oriented, easy to use, economically sustainable with a market that supports the uptake of charging infrastructure. Some say it should be fast, high quality, it should be interoperable, so that every user can charge at any charging stations, should be readily available, safe, smart, and transparent, for example, in regards to pricing. So you see, it's a very complex issue, lots of dimensions to be covered. And that's why I'm very happy that we have such a panel of such distinguished experts from a variety of different backgrounds here. Next slide, please. Today we welcome Arne Richters, Head of Public Affairs and Communication at Allego, Quentin Ducreux-Lerbourg, co-founder of ChargePrice, Barche Debray, who is Chief International Officer at ELAT and Vice President of AVERE, Xavier Moore, Chairman of the E-Mobility Task Force at Smarten, and Olivier Paturet, Head of Public Affairs at Charin. To kick it off, we'll start with Xavier Moreau. He works as strategic advisor for Nuve, a global leader in vehicle-to-grid technology. And he also chairs the EV task force of Smarten, which is an association for consumer-driven digital and decarbonized energy solutions. And he will give us some background on smart charging and why it's so important that charging infrastructure should be smart. Xavier, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So just a word about Smart 10. Indeed, we integrate the decentralized solutions of the clean energy transition. And our vision is that there should be opportunities for every company, building, and car to support an increasingly renewable energy system, so that every European benefits from playing an active role in the clean energy transition. And so NUVI is a member of Smart 10. NUVI is a vehicle-to-grid aggregator that reduces the total cost of ownership of electric vehicles by monetizing their flexibility on energy markets when they are parked idle. So we do that using a technology called V2G, vehicle-to-grid, that enables bidirectional charging and discharging at various rates of the batteries of EV. And we aggregate a tiny portion of batteries of thousands of electric vehicles to create a virtual battery for the network. We do this across the world with cars, with vans, trucks, buses, and with second life batteries from vehicles. So we consider that integrating electric vehicles and the power system can bring benefits to both. To do this, first, you must establish a balance with two things. Consider that electric vehicles are decentralized energy resources, just like any other. And at the same time, deploy the proper smart charging infrastructure for these electric vehicles. And with those two pillars, then you can have benefits for the grid, where the batteries of the electric vehicles are offering a buffer to absorb the variability of power. For example, when there is too much wind or too much nuclear power in the system, you can absorb it in the battery of the electric vehicles and give it back when there is not enough solar or too much consumption. It also brings benefits the other way around for electric vehicles, because a clean grid enables electric vehicles to really drive on decarbonized energy, decarbonized electricity. So for the European Union, we believe the priority must be on this integration of electric vehicle and the power system. And how to do that? Well, it's by empowering the end users into prosumers to achieve a system efficiency, not to stay only at the small local efficiency, but really take a whole approach to efficiency. And the background to this AFID revision we are discussing today is that the current AFID is really focus, as its name says, it covers several alternative fuels, such as natural gas, hydrogen, and electricity. So it's not only about electricity. And the current AFID is also very focused on public fast charging infrastructure. But we believe this should be taken in the wider picture when we revise the AFID. First, continuing the implementation of the electricity market design in the member states, but also take into account the inputs from the energy system integration strategy from the EU and the renovation wave that were discussed in the previous years. And AFID is only one element that should fit with the energy for performance for building directives, the Renewable Energy Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive. So really, you must keep in mind this wider landscape when discussing the revision of the AFID. Also, it's important to remember that what is being discussed now will come into force and will have an impact probably after 2025, because you have plenty of steps. You have the trilogue between the Commission, the Parliament, the Council, and so on. If we want things to go a bit faster, maybe moving from a directive to a regulation could accelerate the impact and of what is being decided in a revised AFID. As a strong principle, we believe that this revised AFID should ensure that charging infrastructure is future-proof to avoid stranded assets. The risk if all electric vehicles cannot be decentralized energy resources is that you end up with a dumb charger being installed today, staying 10 years in the parking lot and blocking the use of the vehicle as a decentralized energy resource, even in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. One example is if you have only unidirectional chargers, obviously you can do smart charging only as long as you are charging. So if the vehicle comes back with a 70% state of charge, you can charge, stop the charge, start again. But when the vehicle is fully charged, it's finished. You cannot do anything anymore. With bidirectional V2G charging, you can charge and discharge as long as you want, as long as the vehicle is parked. And this provides much more value, 9 to 13 times more value than unidirectional charging. So to allow all EV drivers to enable them to be rewarded for using their vehicles as decentralized energy resources, they should have the option to unleash the flexibility of their electric vehicles, and the sooner the better, and definitely before 2030. And there should be signals such as price signals and incentives for the drivers to adapt their electricity flows in response to those signals so that they can optimize energy use and support the penetration of variable renewables and avoid investment in grid reinforcement, for example. We believe the AFID also should propose some very clear targets. And here is one example of a target that could be in a revised AFID. It's a target that links two things that should go together, like the two legs on which to walk. That links the deployment of smart chargers or smart charging capabilities, because some vehicles can smart charge by themselves, with the deployment of renewables. And what we propose is a ratio that could be monitored to monitor progress on to make sure that renewables are deployed at the same speed as smart charging is deployed and vice versa. Let me give you an example. In a given member state, let's imagine we have 1 million smart chargers, half of them being 7 kilowatt chargers, the other half being 22 kilowatt chargers. In addition, we have 300,000 electric vehicles that can charge at 11 kilowatt thanks to their onboard smart charger. And at the same time, this country has 30 gigawatt peak of installed renewables. So the ratio will be calculated by making the sum of the smart charging capabilities, so both off-board and off-board, and divide this by the total installed renewable capacity. And therefore, you have this ratio that can be used as a target. And for example, if a country is below the target that has been assigned to it, it could accelerate by deploying more bidirectional chargers, because bidirectional chargers can't double because they can charge at 7 kilowatt and discharge at 7 kilowatt, for example. Or it could foster the deployment of higher power chargers, such as 22 kilowatt chargers. And with those incentives, it would bridge the gap to go back to the target. For example, I calculated that the current objectives for France to have 113 gigawatt peak would not be matched by 8 million electric vehicles that have smart charging, because this would create a ratio of only 49%, which would not be on target. Another possible target would be to ensure that public vehicles that have been bought by the state, by governments, by public bodies, by councils, towns, are put to the use of the public even when they are not driven around. So one could imagine that police cars, ambulance, government trucks, when they are parked, they are still providing benefits to the general public, because when they are parked, they provide a valuable grid service that provide values to society. So society pays through its tax for those vehicles, and those vehicles provide value in the service they deliver, but also when they are parked, because they can provide the grid services when they are parked. So as a summary, what I hope from a revised AFID is that it gives us clear priority to electricity for road transport, because it seems the most efficient way to decarbonize. It should not focus only on public fast charging, but also cover private charging, because we see that close to 80 or 90% of charging happens at home or at work, so on private premises. It should avoid stranded assets by ensuring only future-proof infrastructure is deployed, so that I don't end up in 10 years' time with a charger that prevents me from playing with the grid. It should be coherent with a revised energy performance for buildings directive, or a revised renewable energy directive. And it should set targets that are clear, easy to remember, that give a signal to investors and a general direction of travel. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Xavier. Yeah, very interesting. I take away in particular, personally, the benefits of smart charging for consumers, but also for the grid. The need to get this right now, enable vehicle to grid now, and not block charging spaces with dumb chargers. The need for stronger binding targets, and also for a holistic approach of different proposals. So thanks a lot. I think this was very informative. I'm also seeing that already some questions are flowing in the Q&A function. So if any of you among the attendees have questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A function. You can also upvote questions there that you find particularly interesting. Obviously, popular questions will be addressed as a priority. So thanks a lot. Moving on in the list of speakers, next up we have Quentin Ducreux-Lerbourg, who is co-founder of ChargePrice. ChargePrice is an application or a firm that shows EV drivers the best charging prices, and also helps businesses with data on EV market prices and usage. So obviously it will be very important for users to know how much it will cost to charge their vehicle. That's not currently always the case, but Xavier is the expert. So Xavier, you have the floor. Quentin, sorry.
Okay, sure. No worries. Okay, great. So yeah, I'll be focusing. So thank you. I mean, first, thank you for inviting me. Hi to everyone. I'll be focusing on the price question, because this is exactly what we do at ChargePrice. So little introduction is that if in the past we were seeing, I mean, in the, let's say, very recent past, we've seen quite a change in the community at ChargePrice, in, let's say, the request, or let's say the aspirations, like concerning the prices, what people think is wrong and what people think is going better. So this is what I'm going to tell you here is basically based on what we studied, or like what we researched on, like it's a lot of empiric research as well, a lot of experience from the community we have, which is, for the record, around 300,000 sessions per month and 20,000 unique drivers a month, which are connecting to ChargePrice. So I'm talking about usage, but also feedback, because we are like not most, but a big part of the data we have is actually sourced by users. So we have strong community which related to charging prices. Okay, so right now what we see basically, it's from our point of view, it's a big lack of information related to the prices. So I'm not sure this is linked to any, like to the AFID directly, like if it's linked to the law or any regulation that should be enforced. Basically, one of the major problems we see still is the invoicing problems. And in general, we think that what could be done in the next AFID basically is that the general technical standard for sharing the price information should be increased. So excuse me, I have to disconnect something. I'm getting a lot of messages. Okay, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so we have something we've seen in our community is that we have more and more drivers, which are, let's say, from the mainstream, let's say, public. So before we had people who were quite passionate about EV charging, so they were more eager to cope with problems or to find solutions. Now we have more and more people using cars from fleets or even private users, but they just want to charge conveniently, especially actually drivers from fleets, because when they have their basically the car given to them or given to them by the employer, they just want to charge. They don't want anything more complicated that prevents them to do their work properly. That's really something we've seen. So a lot of new users who say, okay, I have this car, I didn't ask for anything, and why is it so complicated to know how much I'm going to charge? Okay, so, and even how to charge actually. So it's basically less and less niche and early adopters, I would say, that again, based on what we see in our community. Quick disclaimer, I'm going to discuss the prices now. So quick disclaimer, I also work, of course, with a CPO, a pure CPO, which is called Electric 55 Charging, which is based and located and operating in France. We're actually operating all over Europe, but we own a charging network. And this is our stations. These are all located in France, around Paris and in the south of France. Why do I tell you this? Because I do have a stake in like making charging prices as well, but we are purely B2B, and we do offer the same price for all mobility providers, and we try to be competitive. So now everything should be clear. I would like to tell you very quickly the problems we see every day, how we can cope with them, and then maybe tell you quickly, summing it up, tell you a few ideas we might have that could be used for like in the new AFID, etc. So the main problem, which I mentioned in the intro, is the wrong invoices. When I say this, basically you see a certain price in a charging app or on a website, and then when you receive an invoice, it's the wrong price. So you see a kilowatt hour is €1, whatever, 1 cent, and then you receive an invoice where it's 2 cents. So this is quite bad. Every day we have, if not dozens, we have quite a few feedbacks from users, which tell us, okay, the price is wrong. It's not you guys who are wrong, but the actual price in the app is wrong. Also, lack of clarity in the prices. This is the second main, let's say, feedback we have. So people tell us, I don't know what the price is, but it's not clear. And then we try to research. We, of course, I'll discuss the solutions we have, but we connect with the CPOs, etc., the EMPs, and then try to discuss it with them. Unfair pricing, at least something which is seen as unfair by the community, namely, if you charge at some networks, you're going to have to pay. Your sessions will be calculated on kilowatts with one charging card, one EMP, and maybe per minute with another one. So this is hard to understand for users. I personally think it's not necessarily a problem, but it's seen by the community, by many people, as a problem. Random price changes as well. And what also we call incoherent pricing, which again, it's quite judgmental, because the incoherent pricing is basically just usually linked to a lack of explanation of clarity. So there are two kinds of incoherent pricing. It's the prices which change per POI or per even connectors. This is seen as a very bad thing by the community. And it can also, it's not only per connector. I know some CPOs where the price description on their websites is, for instance, 22 kilowatt when you charge during the day, but then the price is just 7. There's a price for 22 kilowatt hour when you charge during the day and 7 kilowatt hour when you charge during the night. So you don't really know what's happening, if it's because your car, do they cut the power at night? I don't even think they can technically do that when at this particular CPO, etc. Very unclear. Also, something that we see coming in some markets, especially France, it's the prices depending on what the car consumes technically. So let's say you have certain thresholds for which the kilowatt price or even the minute price would change. Let's say if you consume 2 kilowatt hour, you pay a certain price. If you consume 4 kilowatt hour, you would pay a certain price. So the unit price changes depending on what you consume on the same station, etc. This causes a lot of technical problem. Actually, also metering. Is it actually legal to do this with the particular metering the stations have inside, etc., etc. So this anyway is seen as something quite bad by the users. How we cope with this? So this again is just to give ideas and to explain you how we try to fix this issue for the community. First, the main asset we have, I think, is the information from the community. So it's like field information. So basically someone is at the station or had a problem at the station or basically sends us an information from the field. And this is how we basically crowdsource information. This is very powerful. I think it's going to be the most reliable information we have at charge price. Even more than API connections, actually. The other way we have is we basically find clever ways to avoid the complications. So we try to, the way we calculate prices, if you don't know charge price already, I should maybe have explained you before, what we do is we calculate in advance the cost of a session, of a charging session, depending on the charging card you're using, depending on the car you're using, obviously, the time you're going to charge, the time of the day, etc., etc. So basically, you go on the website, you say, okay, I want to charge from, my car is at 20% state of charge. I want to charge to 100 or 80, whatever. I want to know how much time it's gonna last and what charging card or app I should use in order to pay less for this session. Yep. So sorry to come back to the clever ways we use to avoid these complications. So the way we calculate can get rid of some issues we have, or let's say we have an experience, which is we know when a price is displayed in such a way that seems to be incoherent, then thanks to our experience again, or the information we have from the users, we cross-check data, etc. We connect to the partners to ask them. So basically, we put the incoherent information in our system and we give more coherent information. This is what we do. This, of course, is very nice for us because we bring value to the users of quality of certain price when it comes to information, but I don't think it's very sustainable. And also, let's say extreme values, a lot of incoherence to our eyes. So when we produce a report, we see a lot of problems, and then we can fix them very easily thanks to producing this report. Okay. Now to the actual prices. So again, we saw a very obvious switch from, let's say, requests or concerns from the community for kilowatt prices to requests for clearer prices. So to actually bring clarity in my sentence, which was a bit awkward, it's that before, let's say, since I would say until end of 2020, users were saying we need kilowatt prices everywhere. They really did not want any time-based prices, which is still common even in some countries where mainly the kilowatt prices, or at least we think mainly it's a kilowatt price. In fact, there's a lot of time-based prices. Now, so I'm not sure the prices actually changed, but users now really ask us for clearer prices. And in some cases, we start to see something very interesting. Some users discuss together and say, okay, I'm not charging there anymore because I had twice a wrong invoice, or twice I could not be sure how much it's going to cost, etc. So people, like, even though it could be cheaper, they start to write us that they will stop charging at a certain CPO because of lack of clarity for the price, which of course is quite dramatic. Something which is also interesting to note is that the kilowatt question actually now, when people say we really want kilowatt hour price and that's it, no blocking fee, no minute price, etc., it's mainly for DC charges. For, let's say, cities or slower charging, people obviously understand, I mean, the users obviously understand that you need a blocking fee of some way so that people don't keep parking for free for 2 weeks in a city. Okay. So basically what I'm saying here is, it seems to me that the clarity seems to be more and more of a problem because of all the reasons I explained here. So new type of users, prices which are slowly becoming a bit more expensive, actually. So people really want to know in advance what they're going to pay. And also something which is very interesting is we have more and more hybrid cars drivers. And I'm not sure, I think they had their hybrid cars before, but now they actually want to charge because there are more and more charging stations. So they see that, they want to use them. So to sum it up, I don't think we need a very, very hardcore, let's say, regulation. I think it would damage the let's say, sound competition that we start to see. So strong regulation could damage this, I think. Notably because we start to see the first all-inclusive offers, which is very good. So we now start to see offers where I would say charging cards operator are okay to lose money on one side and on one, say, CPO, basically big DC networks, and not on others. So this is quite interesting. We see this with a lot of enthusiasm at ChargePrice. Again, the vision is that when you will buy your car, it will be like a phone. You choose a flat rate, a contract, and then you just can charge for whatever it costs you per month with no limit or almost no limit. So maybe the ideas we have is that the regulation could focus more on the clarity that is being that is surrounds the prices, basically. So maybe on the B2B prices. Again, disclaimer is that I work with a CPO which has the same price for same B2B price, kind of for everyone. So I know this is a bit biased, but maybe that could be something. Why I'm saying this, because if at the source we have, let's say, more like clearer prices, we avoid all the technical problems, which is to set up a price because you get a particular B2B price, but then you need to assess the price depending on the competition, etc. So it would quite, I think, not leverage down, excuse me, it would quite flatten out the prices down if it was regulated in this way. And something which is quite interesting as well, I think, to conclude, is that our users are we display a charge price, the average kilowatt price, even whether you charge per minute, depending on the car you're charging, etc. So if you choose a certain session, certain parameters, you will see the average kilowatt hour price. Maybe we're thinking to display it per 100 kilometer. Maybe I think this is the idea. Basically, the European Commission wants to regulate in this sense. The idea would be to standardize, to have a common value, a common unit where we could compare common comparison points. So maybe this kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer could be interesting, could be something else, but this would really much help to compare prices together. So that's pretty much everything I had to tell you guys today. If you have any questions, please go ahead.
Thanks, Quentin. Also very interesting, taking away the issue of volatility of prices, sometimes wrong prices, also lack of comparability, and then clarity for users, and the need to be really user-centric while allowing for development of the market and making sure that the users know what they're going to pay. So thanks a lot for your contribution today. And from the user perspective, we're now switching back to a more industry-focused perspective. We have here as our next expert, Arne Richters, who is Head of Public Affairs and Communication at Allego, one of the leading providers of charging solutions in Europe. He's also chair of the Platform for Electric Mobility. He's a Dutch delegate within AVERE, and crucially, he is co-founder and member of the Management Committee of Charge Up Europe, which is a relatively young industry association of charging infrastructure industry that works towards effortless rollout of charging infrastructure across Europe. And he's here today to present the vision of Charge Up for the AFID. Arne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Thomas, for that introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Next slide, please. I think there's a small delay on the slides.
It says post and I have no idea why, so I will stop and try again. I'm sorry for that.
No problem. Yeah, thanks. So indeed, we're a relatively young association. Since the 1st of January, we formally became an association. Before then, we were launched end of March last year as an alliance. We're basically growing. We have 40 member companies now in our association with more than 300,000 charging points in our network or among our membership, active in more than 27 member states. Next slide, please. So our values, which we convene around as a CPO, MSP, and ecosystem-driven charging infrastructure association, is that we put the consumer at the center of things. Everything starts from that point of departure. We pursue an open market model for infrastructure investments throughout the EU, and we're especially active to improve those market conditions. So to ensure there's a non-discriminatory and predictable regulatory framework, and we'll get to the regulatory framework in a minute. We also believe open standards and protocols are crucial for the governance and the running of our sector. Safety and security we view in two ways. That's both physical safety, so fire safety, if you will, but also digital and cybersecurity are topics that we work on. And of course, the EV charging industry as such is very collaborative. It's the transport and energy system meeting each other via digital. So it's absolutely important you work with other sectors, so it's cross-sectorial in nature. Next slide, please. So our ecosystem is also always, yes, thanks. Next slide, please. Our ecosystem is one we often find we have to spend some time on to explain, especially when talking to policymakers who are still relatively new as a sector. So the EV driver there is on the left. MSP partners, of course, many of you on the call and the panel will certainly know, but those are the mobility service providers that have the relationship with the e-driver in principle. You have hubs or aggregators of networks in our space. CPOs is a space I'm fairly familiar with, charge point operators, and of course the charging station owner, the location owners. As a lot of infrastructure business, you also need a physical location to be located. Anyway, there's lots of dashed lines. These slides will be shared and you can go through that in your own leisurely pace. Next slide, please. And then there's the EV charging use cases, also of importance when talking to policymakers. Right now, most of us who know EVs will know them from the private car space. And as Xavier rightly said, most of the charging is at home, at work, or on street at the moment or off street. And that is well in hand and pretty much developed in those markets where you see fleets of running around. We are moving to trucks, heavy duty vehicles, logistics, N-type vehicles, vans. Lots of focus for these type of use cases will be needed. So it requires dedicated funding mechanisms. The beauty of electricity, it's everywhere. The challenge is to tap into it professionally, and especially on tapping into it professionally, we do need some focus from the EU to make sure we can do so, especially on trucks among urban and major routes. Urban fleets, depot charging and the like, also a space that's somewhat more familiar. There's quite a few cities and public transport companies that are already running electric bus fleets, and member companies in our space certainly have experience there. Taxis equally so. Professional fleets are electrifying fast. TCOs for taxis in many places already on par with ICEs, if not better. Okay, next slide, please. So then we come to the AFID review, and this is actually a major piece of why our industry came together to create that focused voice vis-a-vis the EU. And we put forward 12 recommendations a while back. The first recommendation, starting on the top left, is to replace the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive, the AFID as we know it, with a regulation. Really important to create that internal market, single market for industry to be able to scale equally across the EU and make sure it's a competitive space, open market, to make sure we get that right. Widen the scope. It was touched upon before. Indeed, expand it from not only public charging points, but also it's about access. We'll be putting a document forward soon where we have definitions on public, semi-public, private. Actually, our key determining factor is access. If it's publicly accessible, we feel strongly that the same quality of service provisions on public stations should apply what we now call to semi-public. If the access is to the general public, those two things should be on par. Prioritize interoperability, hugely important. Again, this comes back to open standards and protocols. We believe strongly in OCCP and OCPI, and we will keep on advocating for those. And then urge member states to develop dedicated strategies for fast charging stations and actually just a general landscape of our infrastructure. We'll come to that in a minute as well. Introduce ambitious binding weighted targets. We've developed a methodology, pretty excited here to give you a small glimpse of that. I really like the smart charging component there, but we're also about charging capacity of the network in relation or correlation to vehicle fleet. And we have real thoughts about what that should look like. And we can even, with different scenarios, put numbers on the page, which of course the EU has already done. Target there being 2025, 1 million, target in 2030, 3 million. We take a view on those numbers. We welcome them as in terms of focus that it creates. We do question the number as such, especially the 2030 figure, but I won't reveal too much. We're coming out with a communication soon. And then we encourage the EU to take a consumer-centric approach. So that's also about price transparency and ensuring that what you should know as a consumer before you charge, during the charge, and right after charging, what you're going to pay. By the way, in the Netherlands, which is a pretty mature market when it comes to EV infrastructure, this is now law. If you don't do this, fines are in place, 900,000 euros per company. And if that's not enough, it's 10% of your turnover. Okay, focus only on zero-emission fuels. Actually, we think the other alternatives in this directive, well, we don't want to be part of that. And then there's conditions on roaming, really important. Cars do not stop at borders, neither do EV drivers. So it's really important to make sure we don't get the same roaming problematic as we saw in the telecommunications sector. Let's ensure we get that right as well. OCPI as a protocol would be a really good way to go. Improve the market governance. We do need oversight. So we actually are proposing that ACER, based in Ljubljana, expands as an agency its scope, but at least we need governance from a European level on how our market functions. This is in line with the thinking of going to a regulation. The heavy-duty vehicle part I've touched upon. There's currently no focus in the current DAFI for that. Makes sense. It's back from 2014. But these days, we need to have and create focus around that. And the last thing is actually inspired by some country and the right to the plug. Really important for not only public charging stations. When you have an EV, you don't have access to off-street parking or your own driveway. You are reliant on off-street parking or on-street parking. You should have a right to request a public charging station and know about what conditions would apply there. And that also applies to private or semi-public, or the access should be public, to a multi-home dwelling. So if you are a tenant in an apartment building at an underground car park, it would be smart to improve the procedures of the owner association to make sure the first charging station can be installed relatively smoothly, and that the first mover doesn't have to pay all of the bills. Basically, there should be a stimulus package there, also an area of attention. And then lastly, smart charging indeed. Mode 3 with a communicative backend is crucial to ensure, Mode 3 charging is crucial to ensure that your investment in a charging infrastructure, 10, 15 years normally, is future-proof. Next slide, please. Trying to stick to time, so I'm talking a little fast. This is a multi-billion euro industry. We're just at the start, and some member states have put targets forward for 2025, 2030. We need to be able to create certainty about those market conditions because that's crucial for the investment that comes with it. We would, as e-mobility, know we're not an alternative anymore. We're mainstream. Electromobility is a fact. It's coming. It's here. We wouldn't want to be bundled together with the other fuels. So actually, we were asking for a carve out. That's possible. It's been done before in financial service regulation in the past by the EU. So that's also the argument we're making lately. We really want to make sure we get rid of the current patchwork of national rules that really make life challenging when you are doing this across different member states. My company is currently doing this in 14 EU member states. The experience has been a rather steep learning curve, but we need to be able to scale faster. That's why we need a regulation and we need an internal market. So we're calling for a standalone regulation. That's absolutely crucial. Why? Because on the vehicle side, CO2 emission regulation, pollutant emission Euro 5, 6 standards is regulation as well. So basically on the infrastructure side, to make sure you match those vehicles coming in, driven by regulation, we have an infrastructure regulation. And the added advantage is it is an immediate effect. So basically no transposition period. Actually, the review of the AFID as such is already delayed by more than 6 months, and another month I just learned. So basically, let's make sure we get that regulation so we can catch up. This is urgent. Then lastly, we need a coherent framework to also make sure there's non-discriminatory rules across the EU and a clear methodology for member states to roll out their plans with. That's also fair. If there is a regulation in place and you are going to be defining mandatory targets for member states, or at least ones they need to meet, then you need to make sure you have a good methodology in place. And on that note, we are coming out with a publication soon, but it's got to do with the charging capacity in relation to electric vehicles coming onto that market. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we're enthused by the level of focus the EU has and the targets they've put forward. The 1 million 2025 is not far off. Actually, we're a bit more ambitious there. Overbuild is going to be something many of our companies in this space will do. You either get the location now or you're not in the game for the next 15 years. I think we're well aware of that in our industry. The 3 million by 2030, we think might be a bit on the ambitious side. Why? Basically, at some point, when you have a regulation in this space, government help when it comes to charging stations, and this might be a bit controversial at this to say that here, is not needed. The market will take care of it itself. So basically, at some point, we have a certain percentage of EVs in vehicle fleet. The business case is pretty sweet. No more cherry picking around urban areas. So basically the market will move on its own. So at some point you can also back off with targets. The market will take care. And that's needed for predictability of investors as well. If you're going to go for an overbuild of public charging stations, maybe with public money, that kills the market, any market. So we do want to watch that carefully. Yeah. Safeguarding drivers' interests is really important, and we're all about supporting this transition to low carbon or zero carbon transport emissions. Yeah, next slide, please. Right, I hope that was 15 minutes.
Thanks, Arne. Yeah, very interesting. I think lots of very pertinent points. That the need for a strong, coherent framework in the form of a standalone regulation. I think everyone is very much looking forward to the methodology for the rollout targets. Very, very much looking forward to reading that. Some other points that were interesting, I think, role of heavy-duty vehicles, which currently isn't being discussed a lot, not focusing on cars, but indeed needs to be taken into account. So thank you for this very comprehensive overview. And now to our next presentations, because charging, one component are charging stations, but charging needs to be supported also by a reliable and smart grid. And that's why I'm very happy that we have Bart de Bray here, who is AVERE Vice President, and one of the executive board members of ELAD NL, which is a collaboration of the Dutch DSOs. And so he is the exactly right person to give us a little overview over this dimension. And Bertha, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas. My presentation a bit on behalf of ALAD. ALAD is a collaboration of Dutch grid operators. We cover 100% of the market, DSOs and the national TSO. And our focus is to implement electric mobility into the energy system. So not only providing enough charging stations, but also develop smart charging and make in essential, in addition to what Neumann just mentioned, make the car battery a component of your energy system. So you really can use it as a buffer for sustainable generation when there's a supply peak, or do vehicle to grid when there's a demand peak. But first, the next slide. The next slide, please. Yes, Thomas, you also mentioned large ambitions by the European Commission on e-mobility. Arne also mentioned we're a bit ahead of the market in the Netherlands. We have quite a big penetration of electric vehicles, I think over 25%. So 1 in every 4 cars last year, December, was an electric vehicle. And we have to support them with a lot of charging stations. In the Netherlands, 70% of the households, so 70% of the households, doesn't have a own driveway. So we're quite dependent on fast charging stations or street side charging. And this is where we help municipalities, provinces, not only connecting the charging stations, but also make the plans together. And this is important. Next slide. And this is where we can help the other European DSOs, but also countries with some insight. Ambitions. What we did in the Netherlands is solve the chicken and egg problem in a very, very early stage. So we deployed a lot of infrastructure ahead of the market. There's always the saying of the car manufacturers, we can't sell the cars. People don't want them because there's a lack of charging infrastructure. Well, at the moment in the Netherlands, there's roughly in every electric vehicle, in every 4 electric vehicles, there's 1 public charger. And of course, there are a lot of chargers at offices, at semi-public parking, so parking garages. And I think we're somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 fast charging stations. So there isn't any chicken and egg problem anymore. But to roll out infrastructure, it's also very important that you have enough capacity on your grids. And this is what my next slide is about. We have to reinforce the grid. And that is quite costly, but it also causes a lot of nuisance. You have to break open the streets. And if you imagine, for the grid operator I work with in the Rotterdam area, we have over 40,000 kilometers. So that's 1 time around the world in cables. And that's only 3 provinces of the 12 in the Netherlands. So you can imagine how many cables have to be upgraded, how many distribution stations, what it cost is, but also all the engineers we need to do this. So there has to be a smarter way so we can avoid this nuisance or the high costs. Next slide, please. Because what is also a complaint about municipalities and provinces is that they have to wait so long for a connection to the grid. If you buy an electric vehicle, normally you have to wait on a new vehicle for 3 months or 6 months for the charging station. And this is just about the delivery time of your new vehicle. So if we closely work together with a municipality with building permits for a charging station and our investments plan, we can match that. But if you imagine that maybe in 2024, 2025, also a flourishing second-hand market of electric vehicles starts to appear, you don't want to wait for half a year on your charging station when you bought a second-hand electric vehicle, well, yesterday or last week. You want to have it now. So what we did at our grid operator is share our grids. If you go to our website, I made a screenshot here from the city of Rotterdam. You can see exactly where the cables in the streets are, where we have enough capacity on the grid to install chargers. And it makes it much easier for municipalities to make the building permits ahead of the markets. So maybe you don't have to install a charger right now, but you can be very proactive with your permits and the administration. And of course, we still have to do our grid uptake, but it doesn't have to be the hard investments in copper cables. Next slide, please. We also can do this on a smarter way. This is a study we did in an area in the municipality of Utrecht. And the left image picture is a scenario where we see the uptake of sustainable energy, a lot of demand of, well, households in a neighborhood for the coming 10 years. And the number of 25 is the hotspots, the areas, the streets where we don't have enough capacity on the grids. So we have to invest with or without electric mobility. But if you add, so the left image is a normal region without electric mobility, you still have to invest given the rise of the demand in the next 10 years. The second slide is dumb charging. If you add a lot of electric vehicles, the areas where you have a capacity problem on your grid increases from 25 to 48, which means a lot of investments. But you can solve this not only by investing in your grid, nuisance and expensive, but the middle picture shows that if you apply smart charging, the number of 48 is decreased to 30 hotspots. And if you do super smart charging, dynamic charging, so the middle image is smart charging where you say, please don't charge between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the afternoon or very early in the morning when everybody arrives at the office and plugs in the car at 9 o'clock in the morning. Super smart charging, dynamic charging, also decreases the number even more to a 25. So then we're on the scenario of increase of demand even without electric mobility. So with dynamic charging, we are prepared for the future. But this is an area in Utrecht where we apply a lot of vehicle to grid at the moment. Last month we did a press release with Hyundai. They're going to deliver bidirectional ionic 5s. This is the holy grail because it decreases the hotspots where we have a capacity problem with a large number. As you can see, we only have to invest in 6 areas in our grid. So electric mobility is a big chance, an enabler for your grid to integrate sustainable generation and peak demand. Vehicles truly become a buffer and an asset. Next slide, please. Of course, this is done for a lot of street side chargers, AC, but as a grid operator, we don't want to prefer one technique. You have to be open for DC chargers, AC chargers, and please don't make a choice at the moment, because we don't have a crystal ball where we can see this technique is a winner or a loser for the future. At this moment, we're deploying fast charger, connecting fast charging infrastructure, as well as street chargers, as well as home chargers. Next slide, please. Not necessarily a thing for the grid operators, but we have to facilitate interoperability. In the Netherlands, as mentioned before, with one identification card, you can charge anywhere. But indirect, this is very important as well for the grid operators, because you want to have your customers, you want to give them a price incentive when they do the good charging. We have to facilitate the techniques behind smart charging, dynamic charging, and vehicle to grid, but you also have to add price signals, so you don't have to cut off your customers from charging, a scenario you don't want. You want to have them the benefits, the good prices, the well, maybe the earnings, as Neumann mentioned. And for this, you want to have interoperability in your streets, not only for the charging in the Netherlands, but also we like to go on holiday in France, in Germany, in Italy. But it's also important, where we were talking about cars, but we're also adding heavy-duty vehicles and buses towards municipalities in the Netherlands. Also very important for interoperability. Next slide, please. And we're creating an open market in the Netherlands. Mr. Rechter mentioned the open standards like OCPP developed by ALAT, and the vision is that with open standards you create an open market, and you have multiple companies competing with each other for lower prices for the consumer, or better technical solutions, or more quality or service. Next slide, please. But still you want to have some standards. Competition is good, as you see. Unfortunately, I had to pick some internal combustion engines, but I still like them, old-timers. As you can see, they all have headlights, they all have 5 tires, windows, screen wipers, but there's a lot of variety, and all were successful cars. But if you have one of a kind, if you have only one standard and you have no competition at all, well, you'll still, what you get on the next slide, you have no choice as a consumer, and you end up with this, and this is not what you want. So there's a thin line. You have to have an open market, but also with some standards and no uniformity. Next slide, please. And of course, we're in the middle of a revolution. There has to be done a lot of research, development, but also testing New protocols, are they correctly implemented? Research on power quality, research on cybersecurity. We are becoming much more dependent on the electric vehicle. Last week, the Colonial Pipeline in America was hacked, and we can laugh. Well, people couldn't drive their internal combustion engines with their petrol anymore. But what we don't want in a few years is that charging stations are hacked on the same way. You can drive to your office, but if the car becomes a component of the grid, then it becomes really tricky if you can avoid blackouts. So research development is very important, but also conformity testing. Next slide, please. That brings me to my conclusion. A rollout is possible, but please work together with municipalities, provinces, the grid operator, and the planning of charge point operators. We can't reinforce our grids in a night, not even in a month or maybe a year. This takes time, heavy investments, causes a lot of noise, and we need a lot of labor. So please do it in a smart way. Interoperability is very important, and facilitate open markets. So consumers have a choice between better service, maybe a lower price, or good quality. Research and development is needed, so we call for support on that on the European Commission. They recently opened a new Horizon call. But in the end, I fully agree with the former speaker, make it the AVERE, so the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Regulation. So it's implemented in every European country. That gives a lot of clarity in the market. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bart. Yeah, thanks for your basically good practice example of a market where things are quite developed already. So definitely lots of interesting points taken in terms of the need for collaboration between different actors, public authorities, private actors, the need for use of advanced tools, digitalization, vehicle to grid, and keeping open markets and fostering R&D while regulating to a certain degree in terms of standards. So thanks for this. And talking about standards brings me to our last speaker today, because we haven't yet spoken in too much depth about interoperability and the need for users to be able to charge their vehicle across Europe on different charging points all across the continent. And we have here Olivier Paturet, Head of EU Public Affairs at CHARIN, which is a global association that promotes interoperability based on the Combined Charging System, CCS. So Olivier, very happy to have you here, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, for the introduction, and thank you, Philippe, for the invitation. Good afternoon, everybody. I have just about 10 slides, so that should fit within the 15-minute format, I hope. And well, maybe let me start by introducing CHARIN, which is a global organization coming from with members coming from different sectors, OEMs, energy, CPOs, EMSPs, and data, of course. All in all, 200 members collaborating on different working groups throughout the year. The objective of CHARIN is to promote CCS, or the Combined Charging System, which is the protocol that enables charging of electric vehicle on different on alternative current or continuous current. So I will this afternoon just present essentially two type of input that Charin has prepared for the AFID. The first part, which is here on this slide, is relating to position papers that have been issued during the course of 2020 and 21, and looking at the topic of ad hoc payment for EV charging. And yeah, you will appreciate that this is the type of rather focused and technical input that Charin members would like to see implemented in the next AFID. And regarding ad hoc payment, the position that has been agreed and put together by the subgroup on EU policy and regulation, part of the focus group on charging infrastructure, is that for ad hoc payment, the debit card or web-based solution are already available and should continue to be deployed across Europe as a way to allow for easy ad hoc payment. And that mandatory or hardware installation that would be required to enable a credit card payment is certainly not needed and should not be made mandatory. And also the point here is that cash payment for charging EV should really be avoided. This discussion dates back from already the 2014 AFID, and we'd like to make clear that if at all possible, this solution should be avoided for EV charging. And now on price display, and I appreciate fully the presentation from Quentin a little bit earlier, because I think you will find a lot of similarities, is that prices for ad hoc charging should really be presented at first glance, either on the charging point itself or on any sort of application, web-based or smartphone application that would allow the customer to gain clarity and transparency on the prices. And that these prices obviously can also be made available ahead of the journey and ahead of charging the vehicle on, for instance, the operator website. And yeah, this is really the point here, is that there is, in our opinion, no need to go through printed papers or printed documentation at the charging point. And I think that's an understanding that I was looking at in a question and answer already from Finland. Matti Ray was making that comment, and we completely agree that prices are dynamic in nature, and web-based applications are certainly the best way to reflect that dynamic aspect. Now, let me move to a slightly different subject, but also the result of consultation and work from the focus group Charging Infrastructure at Charin. It relates to the standard for communication between the electric vehicle and the charging point. As you know, in the 2014 AFID, the connector, the physical connector CCS was actually already included in the directive itself. If anything, that's one of the topic that really brought clarity and certainty to the market. And the Annex 2 of the 2014 AFID was pointing at CCS as the the favored technical solution for DC charging and type 2 for AC charging. It was not the single, but it was clearly the favored solution, which brought a lot of clarity going forward into the deployment of EV infrastructure. Now, this time in 2021, the issue of the topic at hand is the communication standard that goes with it, with the physical connector CCS. And here, the point that CHARIN members would like to make is that ISO 15118 is really here the future-proof standard for communication exchange between the EV and the charging point, and that this norm, the ISO 15118, is a continuously improving and solution for local and network charging efficiency and simplicity. And what we need to understand is, well, a little bit like it was back in 2014, is that the ISO 15118 is already in the market, and that market share of will continue to increase substantially in the future. So it's very important to protect the ongoing deployment going forward. And final point is that plug and charge, one of the feature of ISO 15118, as well as grid integration, are two key features of the roadmap, and that is certainly something that CHARIN is continuously working on. The other subject linked to that is the subject of the public key infrastructure, and here the point and the position formed and agreed by CHARIN members is that we should really strive for a single European root CA, or certificate authority, operated by CHARIN as a neutral party, and that would certainly aim to provide a fair, open, and non-discriminatory setup in which new parties could access the market and would be, of course, widely accepted by the industry. And there's been a lot of talk about, I heard Arne talk about, creating certainty and predictability. I think that's a very key term. Now, the CHARIN members believe probably more in uniformity than Bert presented previously. And we'd like to see that first of all, there is a clear commitment from key stakeholders, OEMs, the energy sector, CPOs, and so on, towards or in favor of ISO 15118. All vehicles are already supporting the norm, and there's further implementation of use cases. And the point in this deployment is that it brings certainly a level of fair competition and certainty to the market. It brings freedom of choice to customers. It allows for activation or deactivation of the plug and charge functionality. It allows for free selection of the electromobility service provider solution in any vehicle. It also allows for multiple contracts in any given vehicle. And finally, it brings a transparent process and fair terms and conditions for all market participants. And on the topic of the public key infrastructure, China members support the idea that the solution of that China is bringing forward would guarantee an independent, open, and neutral PKI solution. And where is this coming from? Is essentially the way of working for China members in different working groups. And I'd like to point here two working groups or activities that are ongoing within China. The first one is the so-called Task Force PKI, which is open for everybody, members and no members, and is looking at technical discussion and definition on security topics and interoperability. It's meeting on a weekly basis. The second one is a little bit different and has obviously a little bit more scope and reach. It's the Plug and Charge Europe project. It's looking at a market implementation of a PKI solution, as we talked about before. It's open for committed parties, so it means a commitment either financially or resource-wise, and then is discussing technical and market implementation of a, like I was saying, fair, open, and non-discriminatory PKI setup. And as we can see here, these two initiatives have already started work some time ago, like I was saying, a meeting on a regular basis, and some of the work from the subgroup Task Force PKI, for example, feed into the work of Plug and Charge Europe. And this interaction is obviously very beneficial in accelerating the process and guaranteeing a very good level of consensus among members. So this activity is really the result of a number of stakeholders all participating into these two activities. Here, this slide bringing a little bit more focus on the task force PKI, like I was saying, open to everybody, which started back in November 2019 already with weekly meeting. And you can see below the wide diversity and reach of the members participating in this task force. And as I was saying, the recommendation of this and position paper of this work group have already been published, and they are available on the new China website. And I would certainly encourage you to take a look at them. The second group or project, which I should say, which we talked or presented a little bit before, is the Plug and Charge Europe. Here again, the wide diversity and large number of stakeholders taking part in this setup in this team to bring a PKI setup to Europe is crucial. It's at this moment not 14 but 15. 15 committed parties which have signed LOIs, and it's at the moment going through a series of activities, and already issued a press release, which again is available on the China website. So here again, a large number of stakeholders aiming, all of them for a single objective of setting up a European-wide PKI service provider. And certainly in the first work that was conducted by this project, it was identified that at this moment, there is currently one operating V2 route CA, V2G. I don't want to confuse people with the term here that Xavier was referring to, but route CA, it's a V2G route CA, which might not be accepted by all actors in the plug and charge ecosystem. And there's obviously the risk that there would be a number of isolated and non-interoperable solutions going forward, creating a segregated market, higher complexity and cost. Therefore, the solution here again is really to strive for a single European route CA operating by Charin. That's really what this subgroup is looking at, to again create an environment where there will be a certainty going forward and allow for acceleration of the deployment, and that within a containment of the cost structure, which of course is one of the key point that should lead to avoiding duplicating cost going forward. And one of the subject that Charin members are also recommending going forward into the next AFID is that, and I think that's a point that Xavier Moore made very clear in his presentation earlier on, is to make sure that the grid integration is well taken into account in the next AFID, and that there is an overall framework for grid integration functions developed and supported by the AFID in this next version. Of course, in the difficulty here in the 2021 AFID is that it's probably it won't be the case that all these recommendation position or technical point would be included, for example, in the annex of the AFID, as it was the case in 2014. It's rather the view is that the Commission would use the work of subgroups that have been created and bring forward some of these recommendation and technical point in a delegated act. At this moment, as you know, there are 3 subgroups that are active and will bring recommendation to the Sustainable Transport Forum. Charin is a member of the first group on governance and standards for communication exchange. And these points on this final slide have been brought forward already to the first meeting. And yeah, let me just summarize them and saying that we think that securing a genuine consumer choice and equal market access for providers with agreement on the ISO 15118 standard among the industry is critical. The success factors for e-mobility, they are free, open, and fair pan-European market access ensured by respective regulation. And we think that there is an imminent need to agree on the roadmap for ISO 15118 standard ecosystem among all the actors in the industry for the successful rollout of electric mobility. So yes, In a nutshell, this concludes my presentation and the key points that Charin members would like to bring to the table, looking at the next AFID.
Thomas, you're muted.
Excuse me. Thanks, Olivier. Lots of interesting points. I think key role of standardization, ISO 15118, of an open, accessible, fair public key infrastructure. And also, I think to many attendees, it will be interesting to have seen the opportunities to get engaged and collaborate in this process as well. We're now moving on to the Q&A section. We would like to wrap up at 16:45 roughly. Thanks for the participants, panelists, for already answering some questions in the chat. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Philippe, our Secretary General, who has a question himself.
Yeah, thank you. I take the opportunity to have a live question here. Recently we had a discussion with the DG Move, with the Commission itself. So we are talking about revision of the Infrastructure Directive, and we also addressed our concerns and needs about the charging infrastructure, as appointed of the most speakers here. And we got Remark just saying this is we are talking about an infrastructure directive and not about a charging directive. So is there not a big risk on disappointments? What if yes? Do we need another way of collaborations to succeed on e-mobility? Someone wants to challenge on this? Arne? You're muted as well. Don't hear you, huh?
Funny, so.
Yeah, now we do. I think so. No, it's gone. So, go.
Okay, so let me reply to that while Arne fixes the issue. So indeed, I think there is a big risk that we end up with a revised directive of regulation that is not ambitious enough. And what I see or what I sense is you have silos in the Commission. You have the DG Move working on one side on the AFID. You have the DG Energy working on renewables and EPBD. You have DG Connect working on digital interactions, and so on and so on. And indeed, there is a risk if all these things are not put together that we end up with something which is not very ambitious. And I think the European Union would benefit from a very ambitious revised AFID or regulation, because we've seen it in the presentation from Barthe. The value will come from V2G. So we need to go for the most advanced technology to set the European Union apart. We need to ensure that all those electric vehicles are charged with green electricity. We should really strive for 100% green electricity, for example. Because if we put targets that are not too ambitious, when it comes into force in 2026, 2027, it will not make a difference. Whereas if we are very ambitious in the targets we set very ambitious targets, such as full V2G, full green electricity, and so on, we create a competitive advantage for the European Union.
Thanks. Barthe, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. We must, the alternative fuel infrastructure is a substitution from diesel towards electric vehicles or greening mobility. And of course, there is also sustainable energy, but we must be aware that these are all individual products. And what NUVA does, what we want to achieve in the in our area, is integrate all the different energy transitions. So it shouldn't be just a substitution for alternative fuels. No, it should be more ambitious and integrate different directives. So mentioned before, the Energy Building Performance Directive, Renewable Energy Directive, the Alternative Fuel Directive. This is where the challenge is, but also where the opportunity is, because we want to be the most competitive continent in the world.
Okay, Anna, let's see whether the microphone is fixed.
I think you should be able to hear me now.
Yes.
Okay. I'm optimistic. Basically, in our conversations with the different services of the European Commission, there's an increasing awareness that a regulation is badly needed. So I'm very much reassured by that. But indeed, we're a cross-sectorial sector. So it is of utmost importance that the different parts of the Commission, the different DGs are involved. And that's DG Grow, that's DG Enter, that is DG Move, and maybe DG Connect. But basically, they do need to come together here, and that would be advisable. Actually, I think on the infrastructure side, and the fact that Europe registered more electric vehicles, battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles in the world today or last year, on the infrastructure side, we have a tremendous opportunity to play to our strength. Infrastructure and the state of infrastructure in Europe is in tip-top shape compared to some other major industrial and economic blocks. So I think it would make a lot of sense for Europe to make this an area of focus. It'd be a tremendous shame if we don't seize this opportunity. If you look at the amount of players in this space that are already globally active, then I think we have industrial interests to look after as well. I can't be more clear about that.
And Olivier?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly a need to be ambitious. I'm not sure, frankly, that I heard that clearly stated, at least in the first introduction of the subgroup I was participating. I think that the failure or the relative failure of the 2014 AFID was in the transposition, that it failed to take on board the countries from Eastern Europe. That needs to be corrected in this version, and that's probably why we're going to be looking at targets, at least minima targets for countries that have not really taken part in the first transposition. And then the care point, as far as I'm concerned, is a little bit of dilution of topics with hydrogen now being very much into the picture in terms of capturing investment and focus, and also the battery subject. So we see that there are big topics that require big investment. H2 is starting from very far from electric, the EV infrastructure, and the battery certainly starts from scratch. So they'll be taking a large portion of investment and focus. And what I'm really curious to see is whether EV electric vehicle, as we know them, battery EV infrastructure will receive the necessary focus this time.
Okay, so we have a consensus on the need to be ambitious, to focus on electric vehicle infrastructure, and for the Commission to coordinate internally, is what I'm taking from this round of answers. We have one question maybe in the Q&A section for Arne by Theo Fivet. The right to plug introduced in the French law LOM is basically the right for people living in condominiums to install the charging stations in the common parking areas without needed authorization of co-owners, but simply notify them. How is right to plug charge up proposals different from this French law?
Oh, it was actually inspired by the French law. And it also exists for citizens, for example, in a country that I know best, who have an EV, registered it, and want to ask for a public charging station because they don't have access to a private parking spot. And 70% of households in the Netherlands are in that situation. Basically, you have the right to request, and it is usually honored if within 250 meters of your house, if there's not another public charging station there already, And usually that's lashed onto a utilization rate. So if the public charging station has a certain utilization rate, let's say 50%, then the automatic requirement is that another station is put forward. So there's not only a right to the plug for those who live in multi-home dwellings with an underground car park, as many do in a city, but also those who might live in a terrace house or another setup where you're reliant on on-street charging, for example. So yeah, the right to the plug is an important principle.
All right, thank you. One of the answered questions already, but that might be interesting also to pose to the broader panel. By Matthijs Cook, price transparency is arranged in consumer laws regulation. The Dutch Consumer Agency is acting on this item, giving fines as well. Is this an example to follow by the EU maybe? Maybe Barte, knowing the Dutch case very well, or anyone else of the panel?
Yeah, in my opinion, Arne Richters mentioned it. There are very, very heavy fines on being not transparent. But that's price transparency. It even goes a bit further. Consumers in the Netherlands not only want to have price transparency, and the Consumer Authority is seeing to it, but in my opinion, we also should have transparency of speed of charging and transparency of location of charging infrastructure, availability of charging infrastructure. So now I'm speaking really on behalf of consumers and a bit on the voice of AVERE. But this is quite a challenge to provide this, especially as a grid operator, to really have on-time information on the capacity of a charger. But I think that is necessary in the end to make a good functioning market. And regulation in Europe, the same as in the Netherlands, on price transparency, but also the other subjects I mentioned, would be very, very helpful.
All right, thanks a lot. I think we might need to wrap up, already coming close to quarter two. So thanks to all panelists, Arne, Xavier, Barte, Olivier, and in absence, because he had to leave, Quentin. Thanks a lot for taking the time today and for providing your very interesting insights. Also, thanks to everyone who has attended and listened to the presentations. I hope you took something away from today and it was useful for you. And yeah, will be interesting to see what we see when it comes out in mid-July, the final proposal. So thanks everyone for attending. The slides will be shared. The recording will also be shared as announced ahead of the presentations. And I would also like to invite everyone to attend the next webinar on the 9th of June. We'll stay in the kind of charging issue area. We will be focusing in particular on vehicle-to-grid technologies. So anyone who's interested, looking forward to welcoming you there as well. Thanks again, and have a nice rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Philippe. Bye.
Bye-bye.